At this time, if there are no questions or comments from committee members, I would like to revert now to public testimony. So thank you very much for all your comments and questions from the sponsors and committee members. You're all set? We're ready to begin our first public testimony. From this one will be on Article 11 from Ariel Tavares. Welcome to the committee. Is this Ariel Tavares from Reclaim Rhode Island?
Well as Article SB 568.
Okay, excuse me.
It seems as if we are all on the same page that marijuana should be legalized in Rhode Island. It seems as if we are all on the same page that it would bring great economic benefits, far surpassing other industries, as well as a generous stream of income to Rhode Island and people within our state. This begs us to ask the question, for whom and at whose expense? I'm calling to question and challenge the bills on the floor right now regarding marijuana legislation, because for far too long, Black and brown communities have been persecuted and targeted as the brunt of the policies and legislations concerning marijuana and the war on drugs. While there are some very promising aspects of this bill, it fails to address economic and racial that economic and racial justice are not only codependent, one cannot happen or exist without the other. Neither SB 568 or Article 11 addresses the harms, the traumas, the everlasting effects the war of drugs has had and continues to have on Black and brown communities, especially those of which who are poor. As a Black woman myself, who has had family members incarcerated because of these charges, I've seen how their lives have changed drastically over a few grams. Charges that shackle them to a cycle that seem almost inescapable, charges that follow them like a shadow, charges that prevent them from attaining benefits, employment, education programs, you name it. That is why I'm calling for the desperate need of automatic expungements of criminal records involving marijuana-related charges. There's a slightly sinister reality if one can rationalize legalizing a substance, but not expunging the records of those who have dealt with said substance in their lives. Is it then simply a matter of time and circumstance? Is it simply a matter of resources? Or is it intentional subjugation? Again, we return to the question. Obviously, it seems like we're all for legalizing marijuana in Rhode Island, but for whom and at whose expense? Expungement should not only be part of this bill, it should be automatic and it should be free of charge. It should be accessible. Second, I am calling for the input of language regarding worker cooperatives. I mentioned the need of accessibility. One cannot have racial justice without economic justice. A strong social equity licensing program should be included in this bill, not only to prioritize communities who again have been most affected, but also to give them the space to reach the levels that other people have had now, and to reach the wealth levels. So why not give them that space? Thank you so much for listening for my testimony. And again, we have to think of those who have been most affected from these harmful policies that we are obviously trying to undo now. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Ariel, for your testimony. Next to testify this evening is Cassie Barringer, taking a neutral position on Article 11. Cassie, welcome to the committee.
Hi, thank you for hearing my testimony. Hello, committee members. My name is Cassie Barringer. I am a resident of Providence, Rhode Island, and an organizer with Reclaim Rhode Island, and I'm here to testify about Article 11 and the bills related to the legalization of marijuana. And though like so many of us have, I've witnessed firsthand the ways that the criminalization of marijuana has impacted and ruined the lives of so many, primarily poor Black and brown neighbors and community members. I think there are other, and I would echo the previous testifiers' call for the inclusion of automatic expungement and the real need to beef up the economic justice and racial justice, which are indeed inextricably linked in this legislation, which again I think we all can agree it's time for this legalization legislation. But I also just want to speak particularly to the piece which also the previous testifier referenced about cooperative structures as being a potentially really impactful and key way to ensure this equity, that equity is at the heart of this legislation process. And I have worked for many years in and around cooperatives and the co-op sector in Rhode Island and in New England, served on the board of co-ops and been a worker owner at worker co-ops before and land co-ops, and it's a structure I'm very familiar with, and it's one that I think is incredibly powerful for its potential to really both offer a true pathway to ensure economic justice and of workers and co-op employees and co-op producer co-ops and worker co-ops. I think it's really, we have a chance here in Rhode Island to do something incredibly innovative and powerful if we look to that model and resource and invest in that, and specifically in the resourcing of co-ops that are in these communities that have been most harmed for decades on end by criminalization of marijuana. So it's something I would just strongly encourage being considered in this legislation. I think there's some incredible resources out there, networks and organizations who are very knowledgeable about that, and there are others who I hope will testify and who are local who can speak to that. I'm also happy always to share any additional input with committee members and legislators on ways that co-ops can be a part of this. But it's something I think we have an opportunity to really do this in a powerful way, and I think centering racial and economic justice and a cooperative model is the way to do that. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Cassie, for your testimony. We do appreciate it. Next to testify this evening is Georgine Edwards in support of Article 11. Looks like we may have lost connection with Georgine. Will the committee just stand at ease for a minute? Next to testify is going to be Stephen Brown with ACLU in support of Article 11. Steve, welcome to the committee.
Thank you very much, Chair. Stephen Brown on behalf of the ACLU of Rhode Island. If I may, can I address all the bills at once? Would that be appropriate?
Please do.
Thank you. So the ACLU has long supported the legalization of marijuana, so we're very pleased that the Senate's efforts, the governor's efforts to pass a law that would do that. As you've heard from some of the speakers already, we also believe that it's really critical that various civil rights and social justice activities get included in the bill, whichever bill passes. I would note that Senator Miller indicated in his comments that he was hoping to get the Senate bill closer to the budget version, and frankly, we would actually urge the opposite. One of the very good things about the Senate bill is that it does include various provisions relating to social justice and civil rights that don't appear at all in the governor's bill. Senator Acosta mentioned early on the lack of any reference to expunging records, and that's one example. In each of those instances, we do believe that the Senate bill can and should be stronger. States across the country are making social justice a core part of the marijuana legalization laws they pass. We have submitted very detailed written testimony on both of these bills in which we offer a number of suggestions on how to strengthen the laws and address civil rights issues, expungement, also addressing the criminal record check issue, which there's been a lot of discussion about. We think it's really important that any bill take into account the importance of allowing people who may have past criminal records, and particularly past criminal drug records, to be able to participate in the legalization process. So I would just ask the committee members to take a close look at the written testimony we've provided, and I hope we can work with the committee in strengthening the social justice and civil rights aspects of any bill that gets passed. With that, I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Steve, for your testimony this evening. We do appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Next to testify is going to be Adina Birnbaum from Talaria LLC in opposition to Senate Bill 568. Adina, welcome to the committee.
Hi, thank you. So my name is Adina Birnbaum, and I am the CEO of Talaria LLC. We're a Class A licensed cultivation business in Providence, and we're a women-owned company. We're dedicated to creating and providing clean cannabis while focusing on patient needs, education, and giving back to the communities we're part of. We have 12 full-time employees, and I've submitted written testimony with real details about the cultivator landscape in Rhode Island. And I'll try to keep my comments brief. I'm speaking in opposition to Senate Bill 568 today because the bill does not recognize that there are over 60 small business marijuana cultivators currently operating in Rhode Island. We're all Rhode Island small businesses, and we employ about 900 employees, and we really fuel the local economy. The most important message that I want you to hear is that no new cultivation is needed in Rhode Island to support adult use legalization. Currently, there's over 450,000 square feet of cultivation approved and licensed, in addition to the large cultivation facilities that are currently in operation at the dispensary locations. Given the population of the state and the size of the 64 currently operational cultivators, we have more than enough cultivation footprint to supply the entire adult use market. There is no need to add any additional cultivation licenses to the market. Senate Bill 568 calls for unlimited number of new cultivation licenses, an expansion of license sizes up to 100,000 square feet, as well as allows for outdoor cultivation. Any one of these changes to the current license structure would be a serious and potentially fatal blow to the homegrown Rhode Island small businesses that have been supplying our medical market. And it will really leave these businesses completely, I believe it will leave these our businesses completely crushed by large multi-state cannabis operators. And I believe it will also lead to a real glut of marijuana in the market, leading to oversupply and possible diversion. So again, I just want to say no new cultivation is needed in Rhode Island to support the passage of adult use legislation. In fact, the infrastructure as well as the regulatory framework is already here for the passage of an adult use bill. It's why they why the department gave out so many cultivation licenses was in preparation for legalization. If in the unlikely event that there is future need for additional cultivation, the existing licensed cultivators could easily expand their footprint to fill supply demands. To issue more cultivation licenses would only cause more imbalance to an already uneven regulatory system. This, I have to say, is really personal for me. It's personal for my employees. This is my life and my livelihood. And it's no exaggeration to say that if this Senate bill passes as written, it would literally put me and most of the small business cultivators in the state out of business. So I really appreciate your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Adina. We appreciate your testimony this evening. It does not appear we have any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next to testify this evening is Alice Hamblett, representing herself in support of Senate Bill 568. Alice, welcome to the committee.
Thank you for having me. My name is Alice Hamblett, and I'm from Barrington, Rhode Island, and I'm speaking today to express my support for marijuana legalization in our state, but also my opposition to this bill in its current form, and as well as Article 11. In its current forms, or in their current forms, Bill 568 and Article 11 do very little, if anything, to provide support to and to repair the harm perpetrated against those who have been most impacted by the war on drugs, particularly Black, Brown, and poor Rhode Islanders. We owe our community members more than this. One particular issue that I want to bring to your attention is that of expungement. As was mentioned, Article 11 does not include expungement. In addition, Senate Bill 568 does not include provisions for automatic expungement of marijuana-related offenses. Though described as, quote, close to automatic as practically possible, this is not enough. Expungement must be available for all who have been convicted of a marijuana-related offense that they would no longer be punished for under the parameters of legalization. This includes selling and manufacturing. And expungement must explicitly be automatic. Why? Because the expungement process places an undue burden on those who have already been disproportionately harmed by the criminalization of marijuana. When people are arrested, convicted, and or incarcerated as a result of a marijuana-related offense, they face severe collateral consequences. The mark of a record impedes access to stable housing, reliable transportation, employment, and more. While the bill, as proposed, waives fees, to expunge their record, a person must file a petition and hire an attorney. These actions require exorbitant time, money, and engagement from those whose access to resources has been compromised by the criminalization of marijuana, in particular Black, Brown, and poor Rhode Islanders. Unless expungement is automatic, it will be accessible only to those with privilege. Unless expungement is automatic, it will not be equitable. Automatic expungement ultimately shifts the burden away from those who have been harmed and away from those who have been punished for activities that soon selected Rhode Islanders will be able to profit off of and prosper from. An important part of achieving equity is removing, not putting up barriers. Across the country, states are passing bills that forefront equity. If our state proceeds with this bill in its current form, we will become an outlier. Rhode Island will be recognized not for the way it cares for its community members, but for how it perpetuates harm against them. We must legalize cannabis, but we must do so equitably. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, Alice. We do appreciate your testimony. Next to testify is going to be Carol Formica, representing herself in opposition to Senate Bill 568. Carol, welcome to the committee.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, great. Good evening. My name is Carol Formica. I am here today in opposition to Senate Bill 568. I am here today also as a concerned citizen, as an educator, and as a former member of the State Legislative Study Commission, which was charged to study all the effects of marijuana legalization. I chose to participate in that study commission because I believed that through public service, I could make a difference for the betterment of society and for the common good. But that opportunity was taken away when the study commission was terminated before my colleagues and I had the opportunity to address the issues regarding the societal impacts of legalization. I have submitted written testimony in the form of what I would call a mini white paper on the various concerns and unintended consequences of marijuana legalization with regard to increased youth use, unintentional pediatric exposures, indoor marijuana cultivation hazards, Rhode Island crime and environmental hazards, Rhode Island employer issues, as well as additional resources. Also included in my white paper is a web link to Go Local Prov online article published on March 15th entitled Legal Marijuana in Rhode Island, Big Questions About Revenue and Addiction. The article stated that drug abuse in Rhode Island is on the rise, and, I quote, according to experts, numbers will increase if marijuana is legalized. Also quoted in the report is Robert Dulski, spokesperson for the Rhode Island Department of Administration. Dulski quantified the treatment costs for substance use disorder, also known as SUD, in Rhode Island during state fiscal year 2020 as $80,634,847 paid by the state, but added that the total was a very narrow window into treatment costs. Dulski added that accurate, and I quote, accurate treatment data is difficult to quantify and misrepresents the real cost of the crisis. This data does not take into account all of the additional costs related to SUD. The real cost of the crisis is not just in SUD treatment, but also in areas such as the criminal justice system, child welfare-related removals where SUD is a factor, treatment for medical and behavioral health conditions that can be connected to SUD, travel expenses for treatment, claims where SUD is listed within later diagnoses but is a significant factor in affecting a person's general health, lost productivity, and many other non-claims related costs, unquote. Others quoted in the article included Dr. Michael Fine, the former Rhode Island Director of Health, as well as Brown University, the Rhode Island Department of Health, and the Department of Behavioral Health Care, Developmental Disabilities, and Hospitals. For another frame of reference, a cost-benefit analysis conducted by the Centennial Institute of the Colorado Christian University found that for every $1 gained in tax revenue, Coloradans spent $4.50 to mitigate the effects of legalization in 2017. Again, for every $1 of revenue, $4.50 was spent for costs. Now, with that said, my question is, how can any legislator vote on a bill or policy without having all the information on the issue they are voting upon? Would any of you allow a doctor to perform surgery upon yourself or a family member without the doctor having any information on your medical history or your pre-existing conditions? No. We need experts to testify on the evidence-based data and factual information regarding all the effects of legalization, not just the revenue side. There needs to be a study that is fair, that is comprehensive, and that will give all participants involved an opportunity to voice their views and concerns. And I truly believe that after all is said and done, the evidence will show that the societal cost of legalization will usurp the so-called windfall of revenue, and we will be inundated with another addiction for profit industry. Is that legislation you want your name attached to? Thank you. There needs to be a study that is fair, that is comprehensive, and that will give
Dexter?
Armin, welcome to the committee.
an opportunity to voice their views and concerns.
Can you hear us, Armin?
Yes, I can.
Please proceed with your testimony.
Oh, okay. Hello, thank you, Chair Pearson, members of the Finance Committee, Chair Coyne, members of the Judiciary Committee. I am Armin Lucy, President of the Rhode Island Cultivator Industry Association and owner of Evergreen Gardens, LLC, a licensed medical cannabis cultivator. To start, I want to thank the chairs, the members of the committee, the Senate leadership for holding these joint hearings on this historic legislation. I am privileged to come before you with the support of a majority of the cultivators representing all levels of current licensed classes. Cannabis legalization is long overdue. Now is the time to correct the wrongs of past prohibition and the one time to get adult use cannabis right. This is a big challenge, but one that the legislature can accomplish. This hearing is a starting point for discussion among the many stakeholders in the industry, the citizens of Rhode Island, health professionals, law enforcement, and our elected officials. Allow me to provide a brief history of where we are and how we got there. The Edward O. Hawkins and Thomas Slater Medical Marijuana Act was passed into law after the General Assembly courageously overrode Governor Kachiri's veto. This was 2006, and the medical market for cannabis consisted entirely of homegrown cannabis. This unregulated market was in place until the compassion centers began to open in 2013. Compassion centers, although vertically integrated, were allowed to purchase medicine from patients and caregivers. This was a highly unregulated system, and the state saw the need to take action. In October 2016, the state issued emergency regulations to establish a regulated cultivated marketplace, which would prevent patients and caregivers from further selling to the centers, effective January 1, 2017. In November of 2016, applications for cultivators were submitted and cultivation licenses were soon being issued. Here we are 4 years later, and the state has licensed 65 cultivators who provide the majority of the products sold at the 3 existing compassion centers. Soon there will be 6 new compassion centers who will initially only be able to grow if they absorb an existing cultivation license. This restriction on the ability of the new centers to cultivate was an admission that the state had already licensed enough cultivators to satisfy existing medical demand. In fact, there is currently enough licensed cultivator footprint to satisfy the medical and the expected adult use market. This is what brings us here today. The Rhode Island Cultivator Industry Association is strongly opposed to any additional cultivator licenses of any type or tier and any expansion of the existing licenses until such time that a market study determines the existing cultivators cannot keep up with the projected demand. Should a market study determine that more production space is needed, only the existing cultivators should be allowed to expand. Many of the cultivators, including myself, have poured their heart, souls, and dollars into this newly dynamic industry. This emerging industry consists of many small businesses that need your help. The capital invested and the employees hired by the cultivators will disappear if this legislation passes as written. We welcome the opportunity to work with both houses and Governor McKee to produce groundbreaking legislation that ends decades of prohibition and provides a framework for an inclusive, safe, and regulated industry. As for the bill before us, we object to the proposed cultivation tiers listed in Senate Bill 568, allowing for up to 100,000 square foot facilities. This maximum size facility is sure to invite large multi-state cannabis companies to dominate the market, which would undoubtedly crush existing Rhode Island cultivators. We believe that 10,000 square foot facilities would employ more Rhode Islanders and produce a more robust section of products than the 100,000 square foot facility. Please note that there currently exists 21 10,000 square foot facilities already licensed in Rhode Island.
We also object to the proposed creation of a Cannabis Control Commission. Our collective experience dealing with the Offices of Cannabis Regulation at DVR has been largely satisfactory, and a change to a commission would be costly and disruptive. The transfer of powers included in this bill, particularly the Department of Health's removal from the medical market, are problematic. There are many other issues with this bill that can be discussed at length in the proper forum. For now, we are most concerned with preserving dozens of Rhode Island small businesses, the cultivators, saving hundreds of Rhode Island jobs and protecting millions of dollars of Rhode Island investment. To reiterate, we thank the Rhode Island Senate for bringing this issue up for serious discussion with the intent of passing some form of legislation. This is a first. We stand with the General Assembly to find the best solutions for all the long-standing problems that cannabis prohibition has brought about, and to ensure that the pivot to adult-use cannabis is done safely and smartly. And that, Chairman, I'd also like to acknowledge and thank Leader McCaffrey and Senator Miller for their vocal support in the last recent weeks about this issue. And I have been authorized and supported by 33 licensed cultivators. And that concludes my testimony.
Thank you so much, Armand, for your testimony. I do not see any questions from the committee, so with that, thank you very much.
Hey, Chairman, would it be possible for me to quickly read the cultivators that are supporting this testimony?
Certainly.
Okay. Well, my company, Evergreen Gardens, LLC, Warwick. East Coast Cultivation, LLC, Warwick. Cultivating RI, LLC, West Warwick. Full Circle Incorporated, North Kingstown. Mammoth Incorporated, Warwick. OP Farm, LLC, Cranston. Mother Earth Creations Incorporated, Pawtucket. RTG Industries Incorporated, doing business as Hank's Herbs, Exeter. Bonsai Buds, LLC, Exeter. The Coffee Pot, LLC, Warwick. Gardening for Good, LLC, Pawtucket. Green Med Pros Incorporated, Warwick. Liberty, LLC, Pawtucket. Talaria, LLC, Providence. Canna Farm, Rhode Island, LLC, West Warwick. Mediflora Organics Incorporated, Warwick. South County Cultivators Incorporated, Bradford. CRI, LLC, Hopkinton. High Gardens Incorporated, Pawtucket. Deep Green, LLC, Warwick. ECC, LLC, doing business as Infinite Bloom, Warwick. Emerald Leaf Organics, LLC, Cranston. Treetop Farms, LLC, North Kingstown. Jordan's Gardens, LLC, Warwick. Natural Green Choice Corporation, Warren. Bayside Growers, LLC, Warwick. ICPS, LLC, Central Falls. JB Industries, LLC, doing business as Sweet Spot Farms, Warwick. Salt Pond Medicinal Pathways, LLC, South Kingstown. Rhode Island Tree Service Incorporated, West Warwick. Keno and Company, LLC, Providence. Arctic Green Incorporated, West Warwick. And Coastal Farms, LLC, Richmond. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you so much, Armand. We do appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
Next to testify this evening is going to be Sherry Cruz, representing herself in support of Senate Bill 568 and also testifying on Article 11. Sherry, welcome to the committee.
Thank you. I respectfully request to speak to both Senate Bill 568 and Article 11 at this moment.
Please proceed.
Thank you. My name is Sherry Cruz, and I'm a native Rhode Islander. I want to thank both the Finance and Judiciary Committee for their time. I am speaking today to express my support for cannabis legalization in our state, but also my opposition to the lack of social equity in the current proposals. Although there are attempts at social equity in the Senate bill, for which I am grateful, and would like to thank those members of the Senate who worked on this bill, it needs to be strengthened. To reach true social equity, we must clear records through automatic expungement and also include and support opportunities for those individuals who have been negatively impacted by the criminalization of cannabis. The exact same activity the state is proposing to legalize today for a selected few. I myself have been negatively impacted by the war on drugs. My family had spent decades needing to rely on public assistance due to the collateral consequences of the criminalization of cannabis. These long-term negative effects include barriers to employment and housing, opportunities we need to survive and thrive here in our home state. Based on my own experience facing these collateral consequences, an experience shared by thousands of fellow Rhode Islanders, particularly Black, Brown, and poor Rhode Islanders, I see cannabis legalization as a unique opportunity to repair the harm of past prohibitions. Through automatic expungement, as well as the creation of a pathway to employment and ownership for those who pay the ultimate price for past cannabis-related actions, such as incarceration, fines, decades of unemployment, and housing barriers that we now can actively take steps towards repair. This is particularly important now that we are proposing that Rhode Islanders can now perform the same acts and benefit from and prosper without the same negative life-altering consequences. Consequences and state punishments that have hurt our state's overall economy and public health. This is the state's opportunity to support those who are forced into an underground economy to survive due to poverty, those who have knowledge and skills that now can be utilized and brought above ground and out of poverty, and ultimately repair the harm of cannabis prohibition and improve public health. Lastly, another piece that is troubling in these proposals that tout legalization and social equity is the amount stated that would be legal, which are minimal. Amounts of marijuana over 1 to 2 ounces could be criminalized and result in a felony even without distribution attached. To legalize and provide licenses that allow certain people to sell and distribute literally thousands of pounds of cannabis, yet criminalize 2 ounces of cannabis will blatantly be structural racism. The data has always been clear that Black and Brown residents are overwhelmingly, disproportionately policed, arrested, and incarcerated for possession. For example, places like Bristol, a Black resident is 16 times more likely to be policed and arrested for possession, yet only make up about 700 of over 450,000 of the population in Bristol. I urge you to look at this amount and consider an increase in this amount. New Jersey is a perfect example of a place that seriously looked into the unintentional negative impacts to communities of colors based on smaller amounts as a result, and as a result, increase their amount to 6 ounces to address and alleviate any continuation of unintentional disproportionate impacts on Black and Brown residents. Impacts and trends that have been very clear based on the data of criminalization of Black and Brown and poor Rhode Islanders residents right here in Rhode Island. Again, this can be a positive move forward for our state to increase revenue, not only for cannabis sales, but also the tax revenue and less reliance on public assistance as a result of removing barriers and access to employment for those who have been previously criminalized for the same activities the state is proposing to legalize. I want to thank you all again for all your hard work to make our state a better place for all Rhode Islanders. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sherry, for your testimony this evening. Next to testify is going to be Daniel Denvier from Reclaim RI, taking no position. Daniel, welcome to the committee.
Hi, can you hear me all right?
We can.
All right. Senators, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak on cannabis legalization and for holding this hearing on the important and long overdue issue. My name is Daniel Denver. I'm a co-chair of Reclaim Rhode Island, and we have made a just cannabis legalization one of our 2 top priorities this legislative session. The war on drugs in general and marijuana prohibition in particular have been absolute disasters, particularly for working class and poor people and communities of color who've been criminalized and incarcerated. So I'm glad that Rhode Island is moving towards legalization, but that's also precisely why simply legalizing cannabis is not good enough, or else we risk having the legal cannabis industry just reproducing the oppressions and exclusions and problems of cannabis prohibition. And we look forward to working with all of you on improving these bills. From Reclaim Rhode Island's perspective, first, we need to automatically expunge criminal records for all cannabis-related offenses. And then second, We need Rhode Island to become the first state to prioritize and support worker-owned cannabis cooperatives, particularly for working-class and poor Rhode Islanders, people of color, and people harmed by the drug war. We have examples from many other states that have legalized cannabis, and they have tried to right the wrongs of the drug war by providing social equity licenses to a small number of people of color and other directly affected people. But one entrepreneur of color or one working class entrepreneur cannot right the collective wrongs suffered by entire communities. By contrast, worker-owned co-ops build collective wealth for Rhode Islanders and community wealth. And even when states have tried to prioritize entrepreneurs of color and working class entrepreneurs in the legal cannabis industry, they have failed to do so. And the cannabis industry nationwide remains controlled by wealthy white people. We need a different model for a racially and economically just cannabis legalization law. And with worker-owned co-ops and automatic criminal record expungement, Rhode Island can really be a model for states nationwide to emulate. Thanks very much for your time. And again, I look forward to working with you to improve these bills. And I'm very grateful that Rhode Island's finally moving towards legalization. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much, Daniel, for your testimony. We do appreciate it. Next.
All right. Have a nice evening.
Thank you. You too. Next to testify this evening is Dominic Passarella, representing himself in opposition to Senate Bill 568 and also testifying in Article 11. Dominic, welcome to the committee.
Hi. Thank you all very much for taking the time to hear my comments on this proposed legislation. My name is Dominic, and I'm a co-owner of a medical marijuana cultivation in Warwick. I strongly oppose Senate Bill 568 for two main points. Mainly, the creation of additional and extremely large cultivation factories, and also the creation of a Cannabis Control Commission. The creation of more cultivation facilities, especially larger facilities than the sizes now licensed, is perhaps one of the worst things possible for Rhode Island small businesses and their employees. It is also probably one of the best ways to kill jobs and make sure marijuana money leaves the Rhode Island economy. The Rhode Island Department of Business Regulation has already approved applications for more cultivation square footage than Rhode Island will need for both the medical and adult use markets combined. DBR has approved applications for up to 450,000 square feet of marijuana cultivation. That amount of square footage can produce about 4,100 pounds of marijuana flower per month. Some of that's going to be sold as dried flower. Some of that will be converted into other products. All of Rhode Island, for both medical and adult use, will likely, by my estimates, which I've included in my written testimony, will consume around 3,040 pounds per month. That means Rhode Island has already approved more cultivation square footage than it needs for both the adult use and medical market. In annual terms, Rhode Island can produce about 49,000 pounds of marijuana flower and will likely only consume 36,500 pounds of marijuana flower. That is about 12,500 pounds more than is needed, more than 6 tons in excess. I hope this makes it clear that Rhode Island does not need any additional marijuana cultivation. As written, this bill is a perfect legislation to allow large, out-of-state, publicly owned companies to come in and displace Rhode Island small businesses. Consider this. In Rhode Island, the largest cultivation license is 10,000 square feet. It costs around $2 million to build out fully. That's not including the building. That's just the equipment needed to get up and running. Senate Bill 568 allows for cultivating licenses up to 100,000 square feet. 100,000 square feet facility would cost roughly $20 million or more. That is a number way out of reach for Rhode Island small businesses, but not out of reach for publicly traded out-of-state marijuana companies. These companies will highly automate these facilities, reducing the current amount of Rhode Islanders employed in the industry. These companies will also pull profits out of the state. Even though a Rhode Island resident is required to be listed as an owner of the company, multi-state marijuana companies will finance these operations and set up management companies that will strip most of the profit out of Rhode Island. In addition to the 3 existing compassion centers in Rhode Island, who can both grow and retail marijuana, Rhode Island only needs about 300,000 square feet of cultivation square footage. It already has applications for 450,000. To my knowledge, no cultivator has been able to make back their initial investment on their cultivation since the program began in 2016. Instead of setting up a system where only a few very wealthy multi-state companies can complete, please continue to support a system where many Rhode Island small business owners and their employees can make a living wage. Like no other industry in Rhode Island, our livelihood is in your hands. The other point I would like to comment on is the creation of a new commission to control Rhode Island marijuana companies. I and everyone else I've talked to in my industry am strongly opposed to this. The newly formed Office of Cannabis Regulation at the Department of Business Regulation is very different from the original group of regulators that initially set up the marijuana industry in Rhode Island. They are very knowledgeable about the intricacies of the Rhode Island marijuana market, which is very, very different than that of Massachusetts, which this bill appears to be modeled after. It is obvious that there is a lot of tension between the General Assembly and the Department of Business Control over marijuana business administration. In talking with members of both groups, I have found this mostly to be because of misconceptions and misunderstandings. Please, take the time to reach out to them on a personal level and get a good understanding of the complex dynamics specific to the Rhode Island market. Smart, thoughtful legislation, and so many businesses and jobs depend on it. And I think you can see even, I was going to comment more on Article 11, but I feel like the DBR had such good answers to all the questions. You can tell their thinking was so well thought out compared to the thinking, in my opinion, behind the Senate bill, that I think it really speaks strongly on how much they put into their thoughtfulness of the legislation. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to my comments.
Thank you, Dominic, for your testimony this evening. Does not appear we have any questions. Thank you again. Next to testify this evening is going to be Ellen Lennox Smith, representing herself in support of Senate Bill 568. Ellen, welcome to the committee.
Well, thank you. Hi, is it time for me to speak?
Please proceed.
Okay, hi. My name's Ellen Lennox Smith. I live in North Scituate. You've probably seen me in the past. I was the old lady in the wheelchair with a husband and a service dog. And just to let you know, because I haven't been able to let anybody at the State House know, she passed, my service dog. So next time you see me, she won't be there. I'm here to represent patients in Rhode Island with the medical marijuana program. I know you're dealing with recreational, but I think it's extremely important that I speak up and have a voice for these patients. Just so you know, I'm on the oversight committee representing patients for the Compassion Center, and also worked with a group of wonderful people that gathered together in the summer of 2019, and we call ourselves the Medical Marijuana Patient Coalition. And back in 2019, worked on what it was we wanted to see happen in Rhode Island to kind of bring compassion back to the program, because it seems like it was becoming more of a moneymaker in people's eyes than the compassion that Slater had originally wanted this to be. By 2020, before the pandemic hit, it became a bill, and the House was 7621 and the Senate was 2544. It was positive. We had spoken to many of you and did communication, and then the pandemic hit. So now that same bill and there was a reason I'm getting to this, is now in the House at H5455. So as you're discussing the idea of recreational for everybody, I'm looking at two topics, presentations here that I have concern. First is the Article 11. I'm extremely concerned with the idea of people being fired if they test positive. I just want to make sure you all understand that if somebody even uses CBD from hemp, that can accumulate in the system and cause a positive urine test also, along with regular cannabis. So I think that's really not acceptable to have to do that. If somebody's a legal patient, we need to make sure we don't put that onto them. And also I noticed in Article 11 it talks about no cultivation. Now, I do not see words if it says, but it's okay for medical or not. I have been home growing, and it's the least expensive way and the safest way for me to be sure I can get what I need. I've been doing this since being a patient in 2007. So the thought that that's being touched and talked about scares the heck out of me, and I hope you will not take that away from the medical patients in the state. It's extremely important. I do notice that the other one, S0568, does include cultivation correction, to be allowed. So I hope that we will continue with that. I see good in both Article 11 and the Senate Bill 0568, but my concern, and I hope you have in front of you my written testimony, because I sent to you bullet points of ideas we came up with that we thought were extremely important that should become amendments to whatever it is you decide to add on. For instance, no longer waiting for your condition to be qualified in the state, but instead go back to the doctor-patient relationship where a doctor or even the nurse practitioner can recommend this and see if this could possibly be a way to help patients. We would love to see elimination of the plant tagging. It's killing us financially. There are a lot of people out there that are just not even doing it anymore because they can't afford it. So we just need to correct this. We need to establish a program for people on SSI, SSDI, Medicaid, and so on for hardship designations and other reasons. We need to help take care of the people. And right now, this is the opportunity. You're about to possibly go recreational for everybody. It can be a wonderful moneymaker for the state, but let's help the medical program people not have to be people aren't able to afford medication. So this is our opportunity to take away some of these unnecessary expenses that we're being expected to put out there. So, I could go on, but hopefully you have that piece of paper in front of you. You can see all the different bullet points. We would really like to see compassion brought back to the state where those of us in the program are grateful to be able to have the rights to use cannabis as a medical use. I have no problem with recreation coming along, but I don't want to see this hurting us any more than we've already been hurt financially with the programs the way it's been adjusted and changed. I hope that makes sense. I'm more than happy to answer questions. It's so weird not seeing your faces. I was hoping it was going to be Zoom so we could at least look at each other. Does anybody have a question from me that they'd like to hear?
Thank you so much, Ellen, for your testimony. Appears that Senator
And who is this, please?
Senator Pearson.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
And it appears that Senator Archambault does have a question. Senator?
Oh, good.
Well, no, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to welcome my friend Ellen and say I give you my sympathy on the passing of your service dog. He was a sweet guy. Always enjoyed seeing you with him. So, and I know you operate from the heart. You are sincere about everything you say. The state needs more people like you. So thanks for coming and testifying, and my compassion is with you on your loss.
Well, it's so sad because we're all dealing with it because of the pandemic. I'm now 2 years waiting for another match, but because of this, they had to shut down the dogs going to the Monday through Friday to a prison. They had to shut the prisons down. I don't even know when I'm getting another one, so I've had to learn life without her, and I don't know if you're aware of 6 days after she got matched and came home to me from training, I stopped breathing in the middle of the night. She jumped up on that bed and repositioned me and brought me back to life. I literally owe my life to this dog. So it's been a little scary living life without her and not having a replacement. So that's so kind of you to say that. That really means the world to me. And I wanted to say it out loud to you all. I know it sounds silly. Some of you sitting there don't know me, but most people come up to my husband and I and say, "Oh, how's Maggie?" And I say, "Yeah, hi, it's Ellen and Stu too." I mean, people know us because of her, and that will no longer be. So thank you for saying something. That's really nice of you. Okay.
Yeah, my prayers are with you, my friend. Good luck. Good luck getting somebody else.
Thank you. Next time I get to see you all in person, and hopefully with a new dog by my side, okay? And please, if there's anything I can do to help defend medical patients in this state, I really would appreciate the opportunity to keep speaking up and represent them because, you know, like I said, we're grateful to have this, but some of these changes could be very detrimental to the medical program, and I think we have to keep medical in our mind as we talk about recreational use for other people for fun. This is not this is a way to stay alive for me. Without this, I would not be here. I can't take anything, aspirin, Tylenol, any of the opiates. This is my lifeline, to use cannabis. And it's the last thing at the age of 70, almost 71, the last thing in the world I ever thought I'd be using. But a simple teaspoon at night, I go to sleep and that's it. So it really has turned my life around. So I thank you all for supporting this. And please, if you could just keep supporting the medical program, too, as you make these big decisions. Okay?
Thank you so much, Ellen, for your testimony. We do appreciate it.
Okay, you all take care.
Thank you. Next to testify is going to be Eric Larson in support of Senate Bill 568. Eric, welcome to the committee.
Hello, thanks so much. My name is Eric Larson. I'm Associate Professor of Crime and Justice Studies at the University of Massachusetts, Dartmouth. I'm a resident of Rhode Island for a long time, 20 years, Pawtucket, Providence. And I guess I'm calling today because, you know, there's something as a researcher, as an academic, my research is about focuses on labor, on jobs, on race, and incarceration and where those things meet. So I have a couple of perspectives I'd like to add in terms of those things. So I guess to start out, it seems to me that when we're, you know, it's exciting that we're thinking about legalizing cannabis. I think Senate Bill 568 and the others that are on the table are steps forward, but I think but if we're thinking about making things right, and it seems to me that if we're legalizing something, we are implicitly or explicitly stating that what we did in the past was wrong. You know, what we did in the past, what our society did in the past, wronged, it harmed people, particularly Black Rhode Islanders, particularly working class immigrant Rhode Islanders, Latinx Rhode Islanders, etc. So to me, what needs to be front and center is the question, how do we repair a wrong? And it seems to me that one way these bills could do that, I don't think they do it now, but one way these bills could do that is to think about how are we providing good jobs to people who have been negatively impacted by the war on drugs, the war on marijuana, by the structural racism that has shaped those kinds of programs and structures. So I think to me, the opportunity here, I think there's a couple concrete proposals that could make this bill and these bills a lot better. One, you know, so if the question is how are we going to create good jobs for people who have been harmed by the war on drugs? Well, we know we've already heard that, and we know that people with criminal records are locked out of labor markets. They're locked out of good jobs. So how do we undo that and create a pathway for good jobs? One way must be, I think, through automatic expungement of their records. Again, to some degree, there's an economic question here. There's a procedural issue. There's also a moral issue. We are acknowledging that those people have served time, but they shouldn't have. That's what we are acknowledging when we are legalizing this. So the least we can do, I think, morally, is by expunging those marijuana-related offenses. You know, some people might point to the fact that there have been changes recently in some states and some cities, ban-the-box reforms, etc. Those have maybe limited how employers can discriminate against people with criminal records. But research shows, right, that those reforms do not have the impact that they need to have. So one pathway to good jobs that I think we need in these kinds of bills is automatic expungement. The second one, and this is the last one I'll speak to, has to do with ensuring that the jobs in the cannabis industry that are created are equitable, are accessible, are safe, and are good jobs, right? And so one way to do that, I think, is through the creation and the promotion of the creation of cannabis cooperatives, so worker-owned cooperative businesses formed by, created by people who have been negatively impacted by the war on drugs, the war on marijuana, particularly Black Rhode Islanders, Native American Rhode Islanders, working class immigrant Rhode Islanders, etc. And so there's a couple. So this is kind of close to my heart, I guess, because for the last year I've been researching what forming worker-owned cooperatives can mean for people getting out of prison. And so there's a couple points I'd like to make, and there's a couple points I think I could make here. So for one thing, one part of my research is in Rhode Island, and me and a group of formerly incarcerated people and others are training formerly incarcerated people in terms of what is a cooperative, what is a cooperative businesses. We're interviewing formerly incarcerated Rhode Islanders about what they think about what cooperatives could mean for them. And we're hosting events with cooperatives created by formerly incarcerated people in other cities and states. And we're finding that people, from this research, right, I'm speaking of as a researcher, formerly incarcerated people are very interested in the idea of creating cooperatives. You know, for so long, they've been told they don't get to make the decision. In a cooperative business where you are both a worker, an employee, a member, and an owner, you get to make the decisions. Secondly, these cooperatives work. So I helped host an event a couple of weeks ago with what's called the Shy Fresh Kitchen Cooperative out of Chicago. This is a cooperative of 5 formerly incarcerated people, Black-led, women-led. They are pumping out 1,000 meals a day. They are doing a high volume of business. They are making it happen despite the barriers that they face as a cooperative. So there's the cooperatives work and can work for formerly incarcerated people. The third point I guess I'll make about the importance of creating some kind of channel for cannabis cooperatives here for people who have been negatively impacted by the war on drugs has to do with what other countries are doing. Other countries, Italy, Sweden, there's other examples in Puerto Rico, elsewhere, have acknowledged that people with criminal records don't get access to good jobs, and so they have state-subsidized, state-supported, what they call social cooperatives that are precisely for people who are getting out of prison. So there's a lot we can learn from elsewhere on this, but part of the point I'd like to make here is that we have been working with Rhode Islanders, formerly incarcerated Rhode Islanders, and they like this stuff. So good jobs, to me, must be central for us in figuring out how are we going to repair the harm that the war on drugs has created. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much, Eric, for your testimony. We do appreciate it. Next testifier is going to be Jared Moffett with the Marijuana Policy Project in support of Senate Bill 568 and also testifying on Article 11. Jared, welcome to the committee.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all the members of the committee. My name is Jared Moffett, and I am the State Campaigns Director for the Marijuana Policy Project. And I'd also like to start by particularly thanking Chairman Miller for his longtime commitment to this important issue of cannabis legalization. I believe the first time I testified on legalization in Rhode Island was 10 years ago in 2011, and it was a bill sponsored by Senator Miller. And I believe, if memory serves, Leader McCaffrey was chairman of the Judiciary Committee at that time, and the following year the Senate passed the cannabis decriminalization law that was also sponsored by Senator Miller. So I want to thank him for his longtime commitment to this issue. And I also harken back to that time in 2011, a decade ago, for a few reasons. First, I don't want anyone to tell you that Rhode Island is in a rush to legalize cannabis. There's been 10 years of discussions, hearings, and studies. So I want to underscore that now is absolutely the time to move forward. Second, I pointed out to say that a lot has changed in these 10 years that we've been talking about this issue. 16 states, with New York being the most recent, have now approved laws to legalize and regulate cannabis for adult use. And that includes so-called blue states as well as red states, including South Dakota and Montana. So I didn't expect South Dakota to beat Rhode Island to the punch, but here we are. And by next week, with the addition of New Mexico and Virginia, the number of states with legalization will likely be 18. So, and finally, I say this that I've testified in 2011 to emphasize that I'm here testifying today for the same reasons that I was motivated by, and the same convictions that motivated me 10 years ago, and that's the conviction that cannabis criminalization laws represent one of the most socially unjust policy mistakes in recent American history. And I want to speak to that for a moment and then go into a couple of specific things about these pieces of legislation. So I've provided the committee members with detailed comments on both the Senate bill and Article 11 as they relate to issues you've heard much about already involving the ways that Rhode Island must not only look forward to the benefits of legalization, but also make a focused effort to repair the tremendous harm that's been inflicted on historically disenfranchised communities, especially communities of color. And I want to emphasize that the disproportionate arrest rates along racial lines that you've heard about tonight is a simple matter of fact. Overall, black people who live in Rhode Island are over 3 times more likely to have an arrest record for cannabis possession than their white counterparts. And in some parts of the state, as you've heard, the disparity is far greater. Black Rhode Islanders have been arrested at 5 to 16 times the rate of white Rhode Islanders. And there's a very simple moral consideration that I would urge lawmakers to keep centered in their mind. If cannabis criminalization has disproportionately harmed some communities more than others, it seems perfectly reasonable to expect that the benefits of legalization should also be somewhat disproportionate. And that is the goal of these social equity policies that we've talked about. And I'll speak to that a bit more in a second. I'd first just like to say a few more comments specific to the legislation. So if social equity is the goal, I want to make this point. If social equity is the goal, then we all agree that cannabis criminalization has had harmful and disproportionate impacts along racial lines. It is counterproductive to create policies that exclude people from the industry based on a past criminal record. And doing that only creates racially biased barriers that once again deny people of color opportunities to live their lives to the fullest potential. And along the same lines, both bills should be amended to totally decriminalize cannabis and remove criminal penalties that go anywhere beyond, a small possession limit. Right now, marijuana remains as part of the Rhode Island Controlled Substances Act, and so that should be changed. Cannabis should be removed from the Controlled Substances Act, just as alcohol is. Alcohol is far more dangerous than cannabis, and there's no reason that criminalization policies should be kept in place. And again, if we're recognizing that these policies have racial and disproportionate effects, then we should acknowledge that those are only going to be perpetuated if we don't remove these criminal penalties. Second, I want to speak to the issue of automatic expungement, because this is something that's come up in the hearing quite a bit. And based on conversations that I've had with several Rhode Island officials and experts involved in the legal system, I am very confident that automatic expungement is not only possible, but could very likely save the state a great deal of time and resources. I believe, based on conversations that I'll be, having further conversations with you all soon about specifically how this can be done, but I think it's going to be actually very simple to provide relief to thousands, tens of thousands of Rhode Islanders. And so I will hope that all lawmakers make this a priority to include in the final version of whatever bill passes. And third, I'd just like to say that I really appreciate that both the Senate bill and the governor's bill make efforts in different ways to recognize social equity and to acknowledge that need. However, I think there are many ways to expand these programs and to strengthen them. And I would recommend that lawmakers strongly consider the laws that have been passed in New Jersey, Illinois, and now New York. Each of these states and other states as well have shown us many examples of how social equity licensing programs can be very robust, can be very detailed, and can be very effective and targeted. They also show us that there are ways to smartly reinvest cannabis revenue into communities that have been directly impacted and harmed. So I want to just close by saying that this is achievable. This is the moment to have this law passed. But I also want to emphasize that this is an important historical moment that everyone in the General Assembly should recognize. do you want to look back and look at the cannabis legalization law that passes and, be proud of that and be proud of the steps that it made to recognize and restore communities that were harmed by prohibition? Or will it look sad in comparison to other states that did far more to promote social equity? I think that if you reflect on the moment that we're in right now, it is extremely important to put racial justice and social equity at the center of these policies, and I look forward to working with all of you to find ways that can be accomplished. So thank you so much for your time, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you so much, Jared, for your testimony. It does not appear we have any questions, so thank you very much. Appreciate your time this evening. Next to testify is going to be Jennifer O'Rourke with Rhode Island Political Cooperative, representing herself, not taking any position. Jennifer, welcome to the committee.
Hi, good evening. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Jennifer O'Rourke, and I am a resident of Warwick. Today, I am speaking out in both support and opposition of Article 11 and Senate Bill 568. While I do fully support the legalization of cannabis, the benefits have helped so many people on a daily basis. My opposition lies within the legislation itself. Since the inception of the war on drugs on Black and brown people, we have been arrested at a rate disproportionately higher than those of white people. There are currently Black and brown people in the state of Rhode Island who have suspended sentences over their heads for up to 30 years, if not longer. Black and brown people serve sentences 20 times longer than their white counterparts, and this is our opportunity to correct that. Senate Bill 568 and Article 11 are a great start towards equity and equality, needing a more robust, people-centered legislation. To start, all expungements should be automatic, regardless of the amount and the offense, so including possession, sale, manufacturing, and distribution for any amount. That's step one. Step two is to make sure that all marijuana revenue goes into a restricted account, and a majority, up to 90%, goes towards social equity and social reinvestment, including but not limited to startup capital for people who have been affected by marijuana offenses, those who would like to attain a higher degree but do not have the funds to do so, as they are not allowed to receive any type of federal loans, and for marijuana co-ops, so that people who have been affected can go into a business together and provide a better life for their family. I am asking you, as my legislative body, as people who are supposed to represent me, to please do the right thing. I reached out to Senator Miller and Senator McCaffrey to schedule a meeting to discuss my concerns as part of Yes We Cannabis, to bring some sort of issues and some sort of common ground so that we can agree that this needs to be done. So please, I look forward to speaking to the two of you in the next week or two so we can figure out how we can make this better. Thank you.
Thank you, Jenna, for your testimony. We do appreciate it. It does not appear we have any questions at this time. Thank you again. Next to testify this evening is Juan Cuthbert, representing himself in support of Senate Bill 568 and Article 11.
Hello? Yes. Can you hear me?
We can. Please proceed.
Yes. Yes. My name is Juan Cuthbert. I first want to say thank you for the opportunity, and I was also affected by being incarcerated from having marijuana. It was just like an eighth of an ounce of weed. I just want to see, like a change, and it's, especially when they're doing the same thing that they didn't want others to do and make millions and billions of dollars. I'm a little nervous. I don't know what else would you need from me.
No, we were just here to hear your testimony, and we do appreciate it.
All right. Yeah, this was back in January 2016. It was a while back.
Okay.
It was nerve-wracking. It took me away from a lot of things, my family and stuff, and it stopped my life temporarily. I'm still trying to bounce back from it still. It did stop opportunities for me and my family as well. And this right now is a great thing for people like me.
Well, great. We do appreciate that, and we appreciate you providing that firsthand testimony to us this evening.
No, thank you. I appreciate it as well.
All right. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next to testify is going to be Catherine Sokol-Ratzowitz with the Rhode Island Cannabis Association in opposition to Senate Bill 568 and also testifying in Article 11. Catherine, welcome to the committee.
Hi, thank you so much. Thank you to both the Senate Finance and Judiciary committees for holding a hearing on such an important and exciting legislation. Obviously, the timing couldn't be better given what happened yesterday in New York. So there's lots of excitement around this topic, and it's great that we're at the point now where Rhode Island is just looking to figure out how to do it, not whether to. So I just want to say my appreciation for that. So by way of introductions, I'm Katie Sokol-Ratzowitz. I'm the president of the Rhode Island Cannabis Association, also known as RICA. The majority of RICA members are medical cannabis cultivators, but we also have many ancillary businesses that support the industry, packaging, manufacturing, and in a moment I'll talk about some of the vendors that we use from Rhode Island as well. There may be other groups that are representing similar thoughts about the impact on cultivators, so I just wanted to mention that so there isn't any confusion. I'm also the co-owner of Treetop Farms, a family-owned, licensed Class A medical cultivator here in Rhode Island. But today I'll be presenting on behalf of RICA, and I'm thrilled and grateful that we're focused on this historic issue today. So I know we've gone through the history of the Rhode Island medical marijuana program, so I'll skip through a lot of it. I'll just say that, obviously in 2016, the new cultivator entity was created. The purpose was for cultivators to supply wholesale to the dispensaries, and I don't know how many there were at the beginning, but as you guys know, about 65 of us now, and 3 dispensaries, soon to be 9. The application process to become a Rhode Island licensed medical cannabis cultivator is pretty rigorous and quite expensive. For instance, a Class A 5,000 square foot cultivation facility is $20,000 each year, which you may notice is the fee on the top tier of the 100,000 square foot cultivation in the rec model proposed in the Senate's bill. We created SOPs, business plans, bought and used seed-to-sale tracking software, compliance always being our top concern. DBR regulates us. We're on camera 24/7 with, my facility has 30 cameras, just to give you a sense of the environment that we're working within and how serious and sophisticated it is. So if you think about it, we're 65 plus Rhode Island small businesses. I was going to say, we have about 500 employees, but we just got updated numbers from the DBR. And so combining owners, directors, managers, and employees of cultivation facilities here in Rhode Island, that actually represents 958 people. So when we're talking about small businesses and the impact on Rhode Islanders, first, that we created those jobs, and second, that those jobs would be at risk, as some of my other colleagues mentioned. But we and our families, we're hardworking Rhode Islanders who took a chance on this industry. We've made huge capital investments in Rhode Island between real estate, security vendors, HVAC, electricians, plumbers, architects, engineers, insurers, construction, etc. We've created hundreds of jobs, as I just mentioned. And we're fueling the Rhode Island economy. We purchase supplies in Rhode Island, we use in-state vendors, and we pay our taxes. So while we definitely support adult use legislation broadly, we do take issue with the Senate bill, particularly Section 21 to 28, 11.8 cultivation tiers. If this bill were to pass as is, it would be devastating to the Rhode Island cultivator population. It could easily put us out of business and invite multi-state operators to come in and run the industry versus local Rhode Islanders. We were frankly surprised that there was no mention whatsoever of the current medical cannabis cultivators in this bill. We're not sure if the committees know who we are, how we've contributed to the local industry, and the type of significant investments that we've made. That's why so many of us have chosen to testify today. RICA's position as it relates to any additional cannabis legislation is simple. No more cultivation licenses or additional canopy at this time. If the time comes when a market study is conducted to determine that the existing cultivators and cultivation footprint can't support the demand, the discussion around expanding existing cultivators' footprints and inviting more entrants to the market makes more sense. As my colleagues have mentioned, Rhode Island has more than enough product to supply both the medical and adult use markets, giving the model that was set up years back when medical program was just taking shape. We do have issues with other parts of the bill, such as the creation of the Cannabis Control Commission, replacing the Office of Cannabis Regulation at the DBR. But we do remain laser focused on maintaining the current number of licensed cultivators and not adding more, not at the $100 tier and certainly not at the $20,000 tier, which would be the fee for a 100,000 square foot facility. Just a quick point on the Cannabis Commission versus OCR. We've spent years building a strong medical cannabis industry, which has been highly regulated by DDR and now OCR. We've gotten into a good rhythm and cadence working with the OCR, a relationship we have been cultivating for about 4 years. This relationship is focused on continuous improvement and functions as a dialogue-based relationship. So we have concerns about the confusion that could certainly arise with the development of a potentially duplicative layers of regulation. So I could imagine a lot of questions like, wait, so who's in charge and where do I go for this? And additionally, the transition itself would take some time to get right. And with the other changes going on simultaneously to the market, it might create chaos at a time when we want compliance to be at the forefront of a new model in such an important, visible, and dynamic space. So just in summary, RICA cannot support this bill in its current format. Small business is what fuels the Rhode Island economy. We talk about this all the time. So we're 65 plus small businesses with nearly 1,000 folks that represent cultivation living here in Rhode Island. We've made massive investments in the Rhode Island economy in order to participate in the industry with the goal and promise that it would all pay off when recreational cannabis would be legalized. The governor's budget, Article 11, recognizes this by creating hybrid cultivation licenses that would be awarded to current medical cultivators after an application process, of course. But this bill doesn't recognize the existence of us, the key role that we play in the industry to date, and how we would more easily and quickly be set up infrastructurally to support the new Rhode Island adult use market, similar to how you envision the current 3 compassion centers. Finally, during last year's legislative session, we worked hard to educate and inform the General Assembly about the cultivators and the role that we play in this industry. So we did cultivation site tours, information sessions, and we'd be more than happy to do the same thing with anyone interested in your committees. What we've found throughout these past 4 years is that the more education we do, the better understanding is around the importance of the cultivation role in the Rhode Island cannabis industry and how devastating it would be for us if more cultivation licenses or expanded canopies would be available. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Catherine. We do appreciate your testimony. Next to testify is going to be Kevin Hoffman, representing Full Circle in opposition to Senate Bill 568 and also testifying on Article 11. Kevin, welcome to the committee.
Thank you very much, Chair. And good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to give public comment today. My name is Kevin Hoffman, and I'm one of the owners at Full Circle Incorporated, which is a Class A cultivation facility located in North Kingstown. I am testifying today in opposition to Senate Bill 568, primarily because, as it's written, it adds additional cultivation licenses to the existing limited license market. This bill has actually kept me up at night, as it is a direct threat to my family's financial future and the future of our business and its employees. Senate Bill 568 is also a direct threat to 67 other existing small businesses and over 700 other employees in this industry in Rhode Island, all of whom were deemed essential workers by the state during this COVID crisis. As of today, we have approximately 475,000 square feet of operational licensed cannabis cultivation and manufacture in place, with an additional 75,000 square feet waiting final approval. So that's over 500,000 square feet of cultivation. So that equates to roughly 1 square foot of cannabis production space for every 2 Rhode Islanders. So if there's one thing that Rhode Island has enough of, it's cultivation licenses. So the most important point I'd like to make today is that Rhode Island does not need any new cultivation footprint or licensing in order to support a new adult use market. We do not need 1 more square foot of cultivation license. I believe there should be a moratorium placed on new cultivation and manufacturing licenses until a market analysis can be done to determine if there is a need for additional cultivation. Adding additional licenses would not only threaten the existing businesses and their employees, but it would result in an excess supply of product, no doubt leading to diversion into illegal markets. There is a very strong and robust cannabis industry operating in the state of Rhode Island today, and for many years now, we have had strong oversight and enforcement in place from the existing Office of Cannabis Regulation. The Office of Cannabis Regulation enforces security, compliance, regulation, and testing with the help from the Department of Health, and much, much more. I do not believe the state needs to undertake the cost associated with implementing an entirely new system with a new Cannabis Commission. We do not need to reinvent the wheel. The adult use program rollout could be a very simple process. The only thing required would be to freeze cultivation footprint now and to add an additional handful of retail-only, social equity, when woman-owned adult use cannabis retail licenses, and then proceed with caution. The infrastructure is already in place. The governor's budget article seems to be much more in line with this approach. I'd like to thank you all for your time, and also I've submitted written testimony which includes my contact info, so please don't hesitate to reach out, and I can answer any questions if you like this time. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Kevin, for your testimony this evening. We do not have any questions, it appears. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next to testify is going to be Lynette Forey-Menard, representing the Northern Rhode Island Chamber of Commerce, testifying on both Senate Bill 568 and on Article 11. Lynette, welcome to the committee.
Good evening, Chairman, committee members. My name is Lynette Forey-Menard, and I'm here tonight to speak on behalf of the Northern Rhode Island Chamber of Commerce. I actually struggled with how to fill out the verbal testimony request form, which required me to sign up as support, oppose, or a no position. Actually, none of these choices fit very well. The Chamber actually wishes to bring forward some business-related items that we believe should be included in any final legislation that seeks to legalize recreational marijuana. It's a complex issue, and it will definitely have impacts on our state and the businesses in our state. At the same time, however, we do recognize that our neighboring state, Massachusetts, has legalized marijuana for recreational use, and we understand that brings impacts already to our state. So with that as a backdrop, we'd offer a following couple thoughts as to items that should be addressed in any legislation that moves forward. The first is federal. We have a significant number of employers that have federal contracts or are in the supply chain to provide services or products to manufacturers and others. So it's important that legislation specifically allow those who are in this supply chain to continue to be able to hire or terminate employees in ways that are consistent with the federal requirements, even if that means retaining the ability to refuse to hire following a positive marijuana drug test. Until such time as the federal government legalizes marijuana or lifts the drug-free requirement, these federal contract supply chain businesses need protections. Otherwise, the caught in the middle can lose contracts, and that results in loss of employment. The second area would be drug-free employment policies and drug testing. We believe employers should have the ability to adopt strong drug-free employment policies. We want to avoid creating legal protections for recreational drug use that doesn't exist for other employees except for protected classes like race, gender, and etc. And we would like to take a look at reevaluating the effectiveness of our current drug testing laws and compliance burdens that come with it. We've heard some mixed reports as to what some other states have done in this area, so we are continuing to do some research in that area. And interestingly enough, we've also heard reports about a potential breathalyzer test for active THC, which is really interesting. But we haven't been able to ascertain whether the courts are accepting the test as reliable. I'm guessing probably not because it's so new, but it certainly would be a game changer for police and for businesses as well. Finally, I'll just wrap up by saying the legalization of recreational marijuana does have potential impact on the business community if it's not done comprehensively. We greatly appreciate Leader McCaffrey, Chairman Miller's hard work on this issue, as well as Liz Tanner and her team, and Governor McKee as well. The Chamber is really here tonight to ask to remain, to be a part of that process as it moves forward so that we can make a good comprehensive law. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Lynette. It does not appear we have any questions, so thank you so much for your testimony this evening.
Thank you, Chairman.
Next to testify is going to be, I believe, Miko Lincoln in support of Senate Bill 568 and also testifying on Article 11. Welcome to the committee.
Hello.
Hello. Please proceed.
Hi, Chairman. Thank you very much. And members of the Judicial Committee. My name is Miko Lincoln. I'm testifying on behalf of Article 11 and also Senate Bill 568. I would like this committee to know and understand that certainly it's through laws of this state that we either build or destroy our communities. And many of you are very familiar with the community destroyer known as the war on drugs. And its harmful effects that it had on many people in the past. Its laws and its policies, such as the war on drugs, that has certainly impacted communities of color disproportionately, way more than any other social ailment, in my opinion, that this country has faced. Racism is grounded in economic inequality and the disproportionality of power. And as it relates to these bills, these particular two things, the racism and also with respects to the war on drugs and the legalization of cannabis in the state of Rhode Island, it's the intent is good. However, there's aspects of the bill that certainly does not sit well with me and many other individuals whom has been disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs. Particularly when we go to legalize a particular thing that has been illicit in the past and been harmed, and many people have been incarcerated in the past with this particular thing, and communities been destroyed, families have been destroyed, and a number of different harms and unfortunate circumstances that came about based on the fact that our society at a particular time deemed something to be inappropriate, not just inappropriate, criminal. Okay, felonies. Individuals will be charged with a delivery. Maybe they just want to feed their families, like all these business owners are looking to do now. It seems to me like there's a laser focus regarding the business aspect of it, but there's not so much thought regarding the social equity aspect of it. We talk about, expunging records and waiving fees. Individuals who've been directly impacted come from a disproportionately lower income community. So by default, we are in fact poor. And many of us are poor, many of us are indigent. And we can just go to the court and file a form of corpus based on the fact that we're indigent. And just by default, there's laws already on the books that allows individuals who don't have enough money to file particular forms in the court to be able to proceed and some type of proceedings, okay? In addition to that, not having automatic expungement not having automatic expungements hurts people. It has individuals having to go back before justice or the Superior Court, if it's a felony or a misdemeanor, whatever the case may be, and essentially beg to have the judge, either in the discretionary sense of the word, either expunge the record or not. In the past, individuals would have to go to court if they was charged with a crime, incarcerated. And once they were brought before a judge for sentencing, they have to also beg a judge for leniency. It's a traumatizing experience. I, for one, has been incarcerated before. I'm an individual who's been before justice of the court and the Superior Court and had to ask, unfortunately, for leniency because of something I may have done in the past or a crime that I committed, without a doubt, of course. So, but at the end of the day, that's one of the most traumatizing and humiliating things that I have to go through. I used to be in a cell block, have to get strip search before you even go to court. And those are things would just be brought back if you have to go and have to ask somebody to ask a judge to expunge a record as opposed to automatically expunging it. Historically speaking, the war on drugs and many of the past legislations enacted by the war on drugs, which were directed at, and embolden law enforcement officials to go and, go into communities of color, thereby, locking people up and essentially, closing the door to any type of prosperity. If someone was, or happen to be selling marijuana or possess a little bit of marijuana, those records now blocks them from participating socially in our democracy. It prevents individuals who may have a record. They can't go before some types of committees. They can't get funding for school, housing, employment. They're barred from participating in society because of these particular charges. And for the state now to take the initiative and understand that yes, there's benefits regarding the legalization of cannabis in the state of Rhode Island, and then to differentiate between marijuana and cannabis, and to just, if someone has an ounce a little more, they'll lock them up. But if, you got people selling pounds and pounds and pounds, cultivators, you got, wealthy business owners. It seems to me that some of this legislation is restrictively barring people who was already disproportionately impacted by the war on drugs, disproportionately impacted by past illicit cannabisation industry. So you mean to tell me an individual who actually used to sell marijuana in the past or cannabis in the past, who understands the market, understands the product, understands it, cultivated it, grew it, got charged with a crime. Now the state is looking to do the exact same thing, but yet you won't allow him to participate in that particular market? I think that is, in fact, a racist idea in and of itself. That's the past ideas of Jim Crow. That's the past ideas of black laws. That's the past ideas of black codes that was down south. Initially they look for the public good. Initially they intended for the public good. All the while it's just racist ideologies. And, I see remnants and ideas that, kind of like, parallel with that type of understanding. If we don't really care about the individuals who've been directly impacted and really take the time to have some empathetic understanding and really give some type of reparations, allow them to participate in the industry, allow them to, wipe their records out and give them a better slate, assist them with some funding so they can participate, then we really aren't doing nothing. So I ask that this committee really consider many of these different issues and deal with the individuals who have more understanding of some of these direct details of this particular piece of legislation, and that you guys can please, just find something that's more equitable than what is being proposed. Thank you very much for allowing me to participate and testify.
Thank you so much for your testimony this evening. We do appreciate it. Next to testify is me, Inoue, in support of Senate Bill 568. Welcome to the committee.
Hi, my name is Mia Inoue. I live at 19 Forest Street in Providence. And I wanted to speak to both Senate Bill 568 and Article 11. I am very glad that it looks like marijuana is going to be legalized in the near future in Rhode Island. I think it's a great step forward. And there's a lot that I think is good about these bills. But my main concern is that I don't think that the social equity provisions in either bill are nearly robust enough. It's great that marijuana is being legalized, but a lot of people's lives have been ruined by marijuana-related drug charges, and certainly a lot of working-class communities in Rhode Island have been affected by the war on drugs really profoundly. And so if it's going to be legalized and people are going to make money off of it, it's really crucial that the people who make the profits are people who have been affected by marijuana's criminalization. And so I know that, like, Illinois, for example, in their marijuana legalization policy had a really detailed social equity component that specifies very clearly where funding is going to come from for the social equity licensing program, and just has clear qualifications for funding, and provides for business development and workforce training to make sure that access to the cannabis industry is fair. And so I'd like to see more of that in these, whichever bill is passed. And specifically, I really think it's important that there be an allowance in the bill to reserve a certain percentage of the licenses for worker-owned cooperatives. That's important, I think, because co-ops allow people not just to get jobs, but also to build assets and wealth. And with a co-op model, it's more likely that the profits from the cannabis industry will stay in the communities where the co-ops are, instead of just going to out-of-state corporations, for example. So that's one thing that I think is really important. And then another is automatic expungement of criminal records. So I know that there's some language about expungement in 568, but you have to petition, and it's only for possession. And so I think, it's just, if we're saying that all parts of marijuana production are legal, then all nonviolent marijuana-related offenses should be expungible. Having that kind of a charge on your record can impact your employment opportunities for decades. So it's just really important that it be very easy to get those expunged, and that the expungement be universal. So I want to see automatic expungement added to the bill. And then the final thing is that I think it's really important that the bill have some kind of labor peace agreement to make sure that workers in the cannabis industry have the right to organize and to bargain over their workplace conditions and wages and protections without any fear of retaliation from their employer. I definitely urge the passage of a version of 568 or 11, but I think it really has to include a much more detailed and more expansive social equity component, and that has to include worker-owned co-ops and a labor peace agreement, and then for the criminal justice component, I would really urge you to amend the bill to ensure the automatic expungement of offenses for all nonviolent marijuana related charges. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mia. We do appreciate your testimony in so many of the things that you brought up. I know the social equity component in the legislation is actually directly modeled after Illinois, as you mentioned, and we also do have the worker-owned co-ops also mentioned in the licensing section. So many of the things that you're bringing up, I know, have been addressed and worked into this bill, and I know we look forward to continuing to make those things become a reality. So thank you so much for your testimony. We do appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next to testify is going to be Rick McAuliffe, representing the United Food and Commercial Workers, Local 328, Aspen Blue and Perfect Union, in support of Senate Bill 568. Rick, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and also Madam Chair, for this joint committee. I appreciate your time, and I know you have a lot of people speaking, so I'll be as quick as possible. My name is Rick McAuliffe. I am a lobbyist for the May 4th Group, and I'm here on behalf of a few clients that have interest in this. I represent the United Food and Commercial Workers, Local 328, and I represent two cultivators, Perfect Union, which is in Warwick, and Aspen, which is also in Warwick as well. Perfect Union is the only union shop in the state currently. I will be quick. Let me first applaud your work and Chairwoman Coyne's work, as well as Majority Leader and Chairman Miller for a lot of work they put into this bill. It's well thought out, and I think they concede that there's still work to be done, but they've done a lot of good job on this, and the staff has done really good. They've been very open and available to ideas and thoughts. Just quickly, we support many measures in this bill. One piece that's very important to us is currently the State Labor Relations Act exempts farm workers, farm laborers, from being defined as an employee. So they're considered independent contractors, even if they work for a company at a farm. And so what this bill would do, there's language in it that would create an exception for employees that are employed in the cannabis regulated industry. And that would give the employees, if they wanted to form a union and have a voice, they would be able to do that. And we're happy that the Senate put that language in there. Again, it doesn't require them to be part of a union. It just basically says that they'll be treated as an employee. So if they work at a cultivating facility and they decided to work together and form a union under the federal and state laws, they would be able to do that. So we're very happy about that in there. One of the things I do want to talk about just quickly, there's two proposals that Perfect Union and Aspen have some concerns with. One is the governor's proposal on the lottery. We have major concerns on the lottery. Let me just say that both of them have put their names in the lottery system because they have no other choice. But I have testified before Department of Business Regulation numerous times during this process, and I believe, although I think the intent is the right intent to have transparency and openness and so forth to make sure that everybody knows that this is being done in a proper way, I am concerned about a lottery because I really believe, like all bids that go through the state, should be awarded based on merit. And unfortunately, I think sometimes this is basically, if you're lucky enough to have your ping pong ball go through the hopper and get selected, more than being on a merit-based system. I would like to see anything that, if there is going to be a statewide expansion, as the governor proposes, I'd like to see it based on points, and some points could be added. If you're a Rhode Island-based company, you should receive more points. If you have experience already in this market, specifically in the Rhode Island market, you should get more points. If you are a person that would like to come into this, and we're talking about social equity, and you can show that you're going to provide social equity, or you're going to have a company that's minority owned by women or minorities, you should get extra points. The way you treat your employees and so forth, we believe there should be points there. So we've been maintaining that for the last 5 years. And while this process for the lottery has been fair and equitable, we do believe at the end of the day, it should be rewarded based on merit and based on points rather than just getting to a certain criteria and then just hoping that your ping pong ball comes up the chute. So that's one thing we would like to do. And the last piece, just quickly, on the Senate proposal, I do understand what the leader and the chairman was trying to do in terms of having 3 retail facilities at minimum in the same community. Let me just say this. Having gone through this with both Perfect Union and Aspen and looking at communities that may be interested in hosting a retail facility for a compassion center right now, many of them are still wary of what they want to do and how they want to do it. And I think there are communities that the members of your committee are on where they would be amenable to having one facility right now, whatever they decide to do, to see if it works, to see if it's everything they want in terms of safety, in terms of being away from schools and churches and so forth. And what we've talked to when we talked to town administrators and council people is that they would be amenable to one now and see how that works over the first year, 2 years, and 3 years, and then they might want another one and so forth. I think if you put it at 3, you're going to see more communities saying no to it than yes to it if it was just one with the opportunity to do more. So I would hope that the Senate works on that. I know what the intent was, and I think it's a good intent, but I do think there are communities that in the state of Rhode Island that would be amendable to 1 and see how that goes before they would go to a full 3. So I appreciate your time, and like I said, I've been involved with this for a number of years through the workers and now through these 2 companies, and I'd be more than happy to take any questions that either of the committee people have.
Rick, thank you very much for your comments. Always appreciated. I don't see any questions by committee members at this time. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you for your time. I appreciate it, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Sure thing. Next up is going to be Tyler Brown, who's representing himself, and he has no position on either 5, 6, 8 or Article 11. Welcome to the committee, Mr. Brown. You may proceed.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you so much. Really appreciate the chairs of both committees hearing these testimonies. I think I have been following the proposals since 3 o'clock, and we'll just go into my comments. I think the governor and sponsors of the Senate bill have openly committed to approaching marijuana legalization through a social equity lens, which I totally support. While there are some promising elements to both Senate Bill 568 and Article 11, neither bill adequately addresses the harms caused by the war on drugs, which has disproportionately harmed working-class communities of color. I think the first place I would start would be the automatic expungement of criminal records relating to marijuana-related offenses. The governor's proposal does not include language around the expungement of criminal records involving marijuana-related offenses. The Senate bill provides for an individual to petition for expungement, but only for those activities that have been decriminalized, namely possession. The eligibility of expungement offenses, I feel, should be expanded to include all nonviolent marijuana-related offenses, including possession, sale, and production, all of which would become legal under both proposals. Expungement should also be made automatic. The burden should not be placed on individuals with prior records to become informed of their eligibility, navigate paperwork, or make time to travel to a county clerk's office, especially if they no longer reside in that county, all to remove a barrier that prevents them from obtaining access to quality jobs, affordable housing, and public benefits. And at the end of the day, you cannot have racial justice without economic justice. You cannot have economic justice without racial justice. And the governor's proposal does allow for a certain percentage of licenses to be reserved for minority business enterprises or MPEs. And the Senate bill provides for the creation of a social equity fund to support the development of businesses operated by directly impacted individuals. However, a strong social equity licensing program should be included in whatever version of the legislation is passed, much like the model in Illinois. And I strongly urge our representatives to look at the Illinois model as a way to include social equity licensing, which would provide clear guidelines and qualifications to allow for funding, business development, and workforce training to ensure access to the cannabis industry by those who have been most harmed by marijuana prohibition. In addition, the social equity licensing program should prioritize and reserve a certain percentage of licenses for worker-owned cooperatives. Cooperatives allow the employees to collectively own, operate, and share in the profits of business. It is a way to not only create jobs, but also build assets and wealth. The money generated from the businesses also stays within the community at a much higher rate because the worker owners live in those communities where they spend the money, and the profits are not extracted and distributed to corporations, shareholders, and executives that either do not live in that community or are located out of state. And in those instances of license allocation where worker co-ops are not a part of that, then we also need labor peace agreements where workers in the cannabis industry can have the rights to organize to ensure fair labor practices and protections at their jobs and without fear of retaliation from their employer. This labor peace agreement also includes, that would mean that a cannabis business would agree to not disrupt efforts by a recognized labor organization to communicate with and attempt to organize and represent the employees of the business. So at the end of the day, marijuana legalization in Rhode Island needs to protect the workers of Rhode Island, whether that is enabling them to own and operate their business collectively or protecting the ability to organize and protect their labor rights. The people at the front of this industry, the workers, need to be represented, and they also need to reflect those who have been most harmed by marijuana prohibition. Thank you so much for your time, and
thank you, Mr. Brown.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. So that concludes the public testimony on 568. Now we're jumping to Senate Bill 252 by Chair Lombardo, an act relating to food and drugs, the Edward O. Hawkins and Thomas C. Slater Medical Marijuana Act, having to do with animals. The first up to testify is Dr. Ralph Pratt from the Rhode Island Veterinary Medical Association, who opposes this legislation. Dr. Pratt, welcome to the committee. You may begin your testimony.
Yes, thank you. As you know, I've been on the board of directors of the Rhode Island Veterinary Medical Association for a long time. I also have 30 years of small animal practice experience. The Rhode Island VMA membership consists of most veterinarians in Rhode Island. This bill was a complete surprise to us. We really have no use for medical marijuana as a toxic drug with no clinical indications. If there are any veterinarians that maybe want to use medical marijuana, perhaps in a extreme hospice situation, they haven't made their views known to the association. Clinical use of medical marijuana is unlikely to be successful due to the severe effects we see with just accidental exposure to small amounts of recreational marijuana. Although veterinary supervision is specified in this bill, we know that a substance generally considered safe in humans will be given to a pet. This bill will further promote the idea that medical marijuana is safe for pets, and it will lead to an increase in much more toxic exposures, much more severe toxic exposures. Examples of other drugs considered safe for humans that are commonly given the pets that are toxic. We have acetaminophen given to cats, causes multiple organ failure with slow, painful death. And not because cats are smaller, it's because they lack an enzyme to completely metabolize the drug, leading in the buildup of toxic metabolites. People give it without consulting a veterinarian very often and tell us about it later. Decongestants and cold remedies, unwittingly given a toxic dose when people mean to give an apparently safe dose of an antihistamine. Artificial sweeteners, although technically not a drug, can cause low blood sugar and seizures and liver failure, especially in dogs. We usually see this with dogs ingesting sugarless gum, but now we have to worry about sweeteners in pediatric suspensions that people might give their pets. So this bill will increase the perception that medical marijuana is generally safe, resulting in severe harm and potentially deadly exposures to animals. And it's because people will say, why not, in the words of Senator Archambault. I don't mean to pick on you, sir, but those words illustrated the problem better than I ever could.
Well, thank you very much for your testimony, Dr. Pratt. I don't
You're welcome.
see any questions from committee members at this time. Thank you for your testimony this evening. Next up, we have Lenny Lopes, representing or on behalf of the Rhode Island Veterinary Medical Association, who opposes this legislation. Welcome to the committee, Lenny.
Thank you, Chairwoman Coyne, and good evening, members of the committee. I'll be very brief. Leonard Lopes on behalf of the Rhode Island Veterinary Medical Association. We submitted a written testimony, so I won't repeat what's in the letter, but I just wanted to echo the comments of Dr. Pratt and the concerns he set forth just a few moments ago. And just very briefly, I actually worked in this issue as a lobbyist for in a company that did certifications. And one of the things I lobbied strong for that since passed was the allowing medical marijuana to be used for persons suffering from PTSD. And I believe I started that in 2014 or 15. And I bring that up only because the reason why it took several years to pass, because respectfully, while there was some occasional anecdotal evidence that it worked, and there wasn't enough medical research to prove its safety and its efficacy. So what was happening then in the industry, there were more and more research and tests happening, and then all of a sudden, I would say, well, sudden for me as a lobbyist, but 3 years later, there was enough study done on the subject matter that proved that this drug, if you will, had a significant medical efficacy on those persons suffering PTSD, and I actually just pulled up a study that was just done in 2020 that confirmed that. And remember, the reason why cannabis was now being allowed to be used because the pharmacological treatments that were in the marketplace at the time were at times very ineffective or addictive, or respectfully, the patient just couldn't tolerate them. If you remember, if any of you guys on the committee, HHS, we had some firemen and some policemen and others talk about how their bodies could not tolerate certain pharmacological products. So they started to use cannabis and had great results. Respectfully, I would say that at this point in time, that there's just not enough medical study to support the use of cannabis for animals. And remember, the reason why you want to include a substance to be prescribed is because it's safe and effective. And respectfully, my 200-plus veterinarians in the state of Rhode Island who care and love your animals as much as you do and as much as Senator Archambault does, respectfully believe that the bill ought not to pass. And I look forward to working with Senator Lombardo, who I had the pleasure of talking to, as well as my dear friend Steve Alves. So with that, I'll close my testimony.
Thank you very much, Lenny. I don't see any comments or questions by committee members at this time. Thank you for joining us this evening. Next up is Judy Mclennan from Lila's Love, who supports this legislation. Good evening, Ms. Mclennan. Welcome to the committee.
Yes, good evening. My name is Judy Mclennan. I live in Portsmouth, and I wish to thank you very much for letting me testify this evening. As a caregiver of 3 Labradors, I am speaking in support of Rhode Island Senate Bill 252. I wish to thank Senator Lombardo for sponsoring this bill and all those who have signed on to it. This bill expands the existing Edward O. Hawkins and Thomas C. Slater Medical Marijuana Act to include, and I'd like to quote, any animal having a debilitating medical condition as determined by a veterinarian for purposes of a prescription for medical marijuana, end of quote. One of my questions is, why should medical marijuana be only available for humans? Research has shown that sick animals can benefit from medical marijuana in the same way as humans. Positive anecdotal evidence is rampant, but animal owners and researchers are extremely hesitant to share their beautiful stories of healing due to the fear of incriminating themselves, criminal penalties, seizure of their animals, or jail time. Restrictive laws make these human heroes afraid to speak out. Here in Rhode Island, there are CBD shops opening up everywhere. They are advertising that they carry pet CBD. This medical marijuana, if it is medical marijuana for animals, is not regulated. It's not tested by accredited laboratories. The ingested ingredients could make the animals sick. The existence of these shops are misleading and confusing, and our animals are paying the price. Most medical marijuana research that's being done in the past 15 to 20 years has focused on humans that suffer from serious medical conditions such as cancer, seizures, inflammation, pain, and digestive issues to start. Medical marijuana has offered therapeutic relief to people plagued with these horrible diseases and other health ailments, making it legal in 33 states. Scientific researchers started to explore the use of medical marijuana in pets suffering from these same diseases and health disorders that humans suffer, and found that it provided relief to the pets. However, current laws on both federal and state level, as well as DEA regulations for veterinary medical professionals, restricts them from recommending and or prescribing medical marijuana products for pets. This legislation is intended to give veterinarians the ability or the option to make researched and tested medical marijuana accessible by prescription if it's in the medical interest of these people's pets. This should be a right to every pet owner and will help to eliminate pet owners that are taking it upon themselves to administer medical marijuana to their pets without the proper knowledge or skill to do so, leading them into potentially dangerous outcomes. I am sure that many people listening to this testimony have animals. Don't all of us who are animal lovers and caregivers want only the best available care for our animals who are basically, in many cases, most cases I would say, members of our own family. Please, let's extend the compassion we show to humans to our animals. I urge the Senate to seriously consider passing Bill 252. I thank all those who are in support of it, and I thank you very much for giving me this time.
Thank you very much for your testimony, Ms. Mclennan. We appreciate the time you took to give us a call this evening. Just so the committees know, we have 2 witnesses remaining for this evening. Next up, I believe, is Stephen Alves, speaking on behalf of Lila's Love in support of this legislation. Good evening, Stephen.
Good evening, Madam Chair, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak on this particular legislation. I represent Lila's Love, who is owned by Susan Richardson, who you'll hear in a few minutes regarding this legislation. Susan has a long background in veterinarian, working for one of the large drug companies dealing with animal prescriptions. The one thing that I want to talk to you about, and Susan will talk more about her research and everything that's happened, that one thing that we need to keep in mind that this particular bill is just enabling. I know, there have been some jokes about all of this stuff, but it really is a serious need, and a lot of pets do get relief from this particular thing, this cannabis. And one of the things I'd like to, again, preface that it's enabling. No pet can get that unless the veterinarian prescribes the legislation. Prescribes the prescription. So, just with that in mind, I'll leave it to Susan to really get into the nitty-gritty of her research. So, thank you.
Thank you very much for joining us this evening and for your testimony. I see no questions at this time. Next up, we have Susan Richardson from Lila's Love in support. Good evening, Ms. Richardson. Welcome to the committee. You may proceed.
Hello, Senators. So happy to have you, have the opportunity to speak to you all today in support of Bill number 252, legalizing medical marijuana for animals via prescription. I would like to extend a special thank you to Senator Lombardo as well for sponsoring this vitally important legislation. This bill is very important to me personally, as I had a big part in its creation. I received my bachelor's in biochemistry from Northeastern University in 1996 and went to work at Pfizer doing drug research and drug safety evaluation for the next 7 years. My job involved assessing the maximum tolerated dose of investigational drugs in Phase 2 of drug discovery. I worked with rodents, dogs, and primates by performing acute, exploratory, escalation, toleration, and chronic studies. It was there that I gained experience in drug preparation, dosage determination, clinical chemistry, and drug metabolism analysis under strict FDA guidelines. While I valued my experience there, I left and started my own animal care business. I realized there is a need to help animals with special needs and health ailments in new ways that aren't currently possible. At the same time, in 2012, I became a Rhode Island medical marijuana patient and quickly discovered benefits to my personal health far beyond what my doctor or I expected. This inspired me to research medical cannabis, eventually working for Greenleaf Compassion Care Center and learning about the industry firsthand. My job duties included formulating concentrations, producing medication, calculating dosages, and learning about the different therapeutic applications of cannabis. Rhode Island medical marijuana is heavily regulated by the state. All medical cannabis is subject to rigorous testing by analytical laboratories, which are accredited and approved by the Director of the Rhode Island Department of Health. Some variables of this testing include testing for residual solvents, cannabinoid potency, microbiologicals, water activity, pesticides,
and growth regulators, as well as heavy metals. The Rhode Island Department of Business Regulation also requires manufacturing and labeling of cannabis products to adhere to very strict standards. It is clear to me that this medicine is extremely high quality and tested rigorously, unlike the hemp-derived CBD, which is not. Hemp, which many veterinarians recommend and sell in their practices, has virtually no regulations for manufacturing and testing. It raises immense concerns regarding safety. Currently, laws on the federal and state level and DEA regulations for veterinary professionals restricts them from discussing or prescribing marijuana products for pets. Education on the part of veterinarians in Rhode Island to discuss the benefits of medical-grade marijuana is mostly founded on a lack of familiarity of how it works and the legal landscape surrounding it. All of this is changing, however. Veterinarians are becoming more educated on the topic and are increasingly enthusiastic about how we can improve quantity and quality of life with this incredible medicine. Excuse me. This legislation is intended to give veterinarians the ability or option to make medical marijuana accessible by prescription if it is in the medical interest of an animal. It can provide an infrastructure that has never been available and could become a hub of research if it evolves, so we can support and integrate more research into this model. This should be the right of every pet owner and will help eliminate instances of owners taking it upon themselves to administer medical marijuana to their sick and dying pets without the proper knowledge or skill, leading them into potentially dangerous outcomes. We need to articulate publicly what we already know privately about the positive health benefits of medical marijuana. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Ms. Richardson, for your testimony. I don't see any hands raised at this time. We appreciate you joining us this evening. So that does it this evening for our public testimony. I want to thank the sponsors, the committee members, and also the public for their testimony this evening. It was very, very informative, and look forward to continuing the work that we've shown this evening. With that, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Thank you. By Senator De Palma, seconded by Senator Archambault. All those in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.